And that's why addiction isn't just about bad behavior. It's much deeper. And people that are caught in it don't need punishment. They need help. Across the world, over 35 million people are battling with drug use disorders. Nom Zimbabwe, Daka. It's exploding in our homes, in our schools, our workplaces, and it could potentially steal our future. And that's why here on Detox, every episode, we're looking beyond just the headlines and the negatives, but we're also looking to the heart of the crisis. Why do people really start using? What happens after rehab? How do we build a path back from them and for us? Recovery is not just about stopping drugs, it's about starting life again. As always, our voices joining us in studio this morning. We've got our social worker who works besides families who are in crisis, an addict specialist who also helps us unpack the trauma beneath the surface. And we also want to understand what going back into the system, reintegration, truly looks like beyond the slogans and how it is possible for you to move forward. It's Capital 100.4 FM at Addis Heartbeat.
Addis Heartbeat, Capital 100.4 FM.
This week's drug of choice in the last few years has sent many people to emergency rooms. It's known as 4-methylene dioxy-N-methamphetamine, or MDMA. You might recognize it as XTC, X, Adam, E, Roll, A, 007, Molly, or even the love drug. When it's taken in, ecstasy affects your mind or how you mentally process things. It modifies your emotions, your intellect, and your behavioral functions. Often you find that this drug is demanded at parties, festivals, concerts, nightclubs, because it's popular for its exciting effects. Particularly if you are a teen, a young adult, it's very popular in that age gap. Yes, the drug now affects a much broader age range. Ukawumwa mshonga iwoyuyu unotamba nepfungwa dzako uchita seunowedzera tsitsi nerudo mauri kune vamwe vanhu. Vanomwa iwowo vanoona sevanenge vokwana pose pose pavanga vasingakwani, pavanga vachishungurudzika kwana vasati vatora izvozvizvo. Users often think that this drug will make them feel good, keep them going for days without rest. Pills are the most popular form of taking MDMA. Kazhinji painomedzwa most people usually prefer to swallow it, although some might actually crush it into a powder and actually snort ecstasy. In fact, ecstasy is said to have such a powerful effect on the brain. Its effects actually linger on weeks after the first ingestion. We're going to keep talking about our drug of choice this morning, ecstasy. Ndisingazoti uchiteerera unoziva here munhu akambotamburawo na 007 uyu James Bond, X, Adam, or Molly. The And then I wanted to ask TK, how much do you know about ecstasy?
Ecstasy. Not much. Not much. Not much.
That's fine. Brian?
Yeah.
You can figure it out, man. As always, we are joined by our panel of experts who are working in the rehabilitation space in different experiences to help us understand and navigate. We also have coming in with a person who's holding our hands through this difficult journey, known as a social worker. His name is Brian. He's actually usually on our show. And by the way, today we have a panel of young people. And it's great to have young people's voices into this discussion. We also have a psychologist who goes beyond the surface, trying to, unravel what's going on underneath all this. And he too is perfect to be having this discussion as somebody who's also walked this journey to healing and rehabilitation himself. TK, he's no stranger to our show. We also have joining our discussion Upenyu, and he comes from Batira Pamwe. Gotta love Upenyu, always giving us the flip side of the coin. And in no way least, he is a specialist in addiction, and he's also head of addiction programs at Insight Wellbeing. His name is Blessed.
Drum roll.
We should be doing the rumble here. So, I'm so excited that we have young people in the discussion. Chango Shota Chunuwan, can you guess what that one thing is on your panel?
Gender.
Exactly. Wow, exactly. Just we are missing women in this voice. But interestingly, generally, I have noticed that it's more likely men who are involved in discussions around substance abuse disorder. I wonder why, Blessing.
Thank you so much, Folake. I think the reason why men are at the forefront of spearheading this conversation against drug and substance misuse is because when we look traditionally, men have also been at the forefront of being the victims in terms of struggling with addiction itself. So now we are at the forefront of advocating against drug and substance abuse. Not to say we are not having females that are also suffering and succumbing to drug addiction and so forth. So we are hoping and wishing that we have a platform where we have more female voices advocating against this scourge. Because kuma ghetto chako we understand kuti the people that are struggling with addiction, particularly women, kana vasina mari yekuita quench that that thirst yekuti abadare drug. They end up using their bodies to pay for a particular substance, ungava mutoriro and so forth. So this is very much deplorable. So I'm happy you figured it out on our panel, and we hope to see the next session having females to speak on their own.
And interestingly, when we are looking at ecstasy, it seems to be a drug that's also common and popular in women than it is in men. Is it because of the property we were just describing just now around how it makes you feel more compassionate? Brian, in your experience, firstly, it's not very common though, is it, as a drug though, in comparison to marijuana, cocaine, crystal meth, dombo. I mean, dombo is crystal meth. Why is that, do you think?
I think, like you say, ecstasy is more like a party drug, right? You get parties, it's one drug you find, right? So it comes in different forms. You get the tablets, you get that one, and then crystal form, that's what they call money, right? So it makes people more social. Let's say you're someone who suffers from social anxiety. You get to a party and then you're trying to converse with others, and then you don't have that. So if you get that substance, you get that, that high, that feeling, it just becomes more social. So I would say for like females, I don't really know how they usually go for that drug, but then, yeah, I think it's just to become more social. That's how I say.
Yeah, got you. You said it's something that you are likely to find in more social settings than many other drugs.
Yes.
In your findings, and this is an open question, is it an expensive drug? If we were to put it on a scale between the cheapest and the most expensive, where exactly does ecstasy lie on the scale from your general knowledge?
Yeah, it's a bit expensive. I don't really know how much it costs, but then comparing to other substances, maybe marijuana or maybe alcohol, those are very easy to get. So with Molly, you won't just find it anywhere. So maybe if you go to high-end parties, that's where you can see it. But then that's where you get to see like maybe the likes of cocaine and whatnot. But then one thing I need to note is ecstasy it's not really that very addictive compared to other substances. Talking maybe about marijuana, it can create a dependency. Let's say you're someone, like I say, you suffer from social anxiety, and then you're exposed to the substance. So the chances that you're gonna look for that substance the next time you go out is very high, and so it creates that dependency, not addiction.
Okay, so normally when you are taking ecstasy, you're usually taking it in conjunction to other drugs.
Yeah.
It's interesting also in our country, and this is according to research that was done by Wilson Box, who's also been one of the key voices as far as shaping what our national policy should look like. He also went in to say, in terms of people who are likely to use ecstasy, women who work in coloring work. Okay, I think you know what when we say coloring, we don't use SEX on daytime radio. Who work in coloring work are also more likely to use this particular drug, ecstasy. Is that fascinating? Or am I overthinking it? But I thought that was also quite interesting to imagine that women in coloring work are more likely to use this drug than they would any other drug. When you say you're less likely to become addicted to this particular drug in your experience, Brian, what do you mean?
So let's say with marijuana, right? You're taking marijuana, so it's very easy for you to get addicted to those substances, cocaine, the likes of those strong substances. And with Molly or ecstasy, it's more like there's that one thing that you always crave for, like even if it's not addictive, like Folake like maybe chocolates, right? We know, I know people, there's an argument like, okay, you can be very addictive or some way, but with ecstasy, it's more like you only go back to that substance because of the feeling that it gives you, right? And as I say, it's social anxiety. So now to curb that, that's like you go to whatever substance, like, okay, I need to be more social. Like I think you're saying the women in coloring work, interesting. They tend to go for that. Usually, yeah, you can't really do that in your right mind, right? Most of them need something to just, make them feel some type of way.
Yeah. So by the fact that we are saying it comes normally as a tablet, that means this is a pharmaceutical. It's produced in a lab of sorts.
Yeah, mostly yes.
Okay.
Most of these substances are produced in that.
Okay, so in our experience, how would this drug be getting into our country?
Check at the border policy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But we do have those substances in our country.
Yeah. So when you had patients coming into your center, Brian, who were battling with ecstasy, tell us a little bit about their story. What were they like?
So hearing the background story, like you say, that like someone who's been not very social, or they just only child, they never got to experience being around people. More likely introverts tend to use the drug, use it. So when now you're starting to get exposed, when maybe let's say you go to university, right? That's where you get exposed to like parties and stuff, right? And then people before saying like, let's go to this party, but then you know very well that you're not a social person, right? And then you get there, if you're exposed to that substance, the next time you're gonna go out, you're probably gonna look for that.
Yeah. All right. TK, in your experience, how common is Molly?
In my experience, ecstasy or Molly is very common.
Yeah.
It's very, very common. From my experience also, ecstasy or Molly, if I can say Molly, Molly being more common, costs $15 a pop. That's $15 a pill.
What?
Average price.
That's expensive, right?
How many pills do you need for it to have effect? If I guess the first time you use 2 pills will do, 1 pill will do. But over time, as the system gets more resilient, you get to take more.
Okay, so put this into context. A pop.
A pop. Well, don't ask my PDs.
I get you.
The crystal.
The crystal.
Yeah.
I think now, you can get $2.
Okay. And
But
it's enough for a high.
It's enough, but it's fine. Standard is 5.
$5.
Yeah, 5
and
bucks.
you're
And that's,
saying for Molly, it's 3 times more.
yeah, it's just 1 pill. And to start at $15 being the cheapest type of pill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, purity in terms of purity, it can go up to 25 a pill.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's a bit of an upmarket drug.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a party drug. Usually, my X pills go hand in hand with alcohol. Yeah, usually, part of my X pills, hence why it's a party drug. Hence why Umabawa, especially my upmarket clubs and bring a secular town. Usually, if you look hard enough, you'll find someone pushing ecstasy pills.
So let's just say you don't know what it is, because for a lot of people, especially in party scenarios, they end up, and case in point, we saw this with P. Diddy case, for example, where a lot of people may not necessarily have chosen to take a drug, but somehow they're introduced to it. So you're introduced to Molly for the first time.
Yeah.
At what point, from your experience, was try this, or sometimes you might not even know that you're trying it.
Yeah.
You take it and you feel
It's an upper, yes.
so you feel great.
It's a pleasure. It rewards the pleasure system.
And
Everything becomes more vivid.
yeah.
The sounds.
Sense of euphoria.
The sense, exactly, the sense of euphoria.
So coming to that expression, sense of euphoria, and the fact that it's called the love drug.
Yeah.
From your understanding, maybe Blessing, you can also come through there. From your understanding as a psychologist, what exactly do you think, or what is the explanation between euphoria to then expressions of love and compassion? What do you think is happening there?
Since it goes and affects the dopamine levels, and all the drugs basically most of the drugs, all right, affect hormonal, my hormones they do. So since it's a pleasure drug, it goes with dopamine at a high. Yeah. The hormones, the hormone secretion is above normal.
Yeah, but something, it's also working on your compassion chemicals.
Yeah,
That's called the love drug.
it's the love drug. It's not necessarily all the time you get that feeling of the love drug, but it heightens. You got to, how can I put it? You become profound. It's profound, right? You like a sense of. Look, you are more compassionate. Your empathy. It fights the para-empathy.
Yes.
Your empathy.
Yes.
Sense of empathy, your sympathy, your apathy. They are all at a heightened level.
Yeah.
I think if you've seen the love that drinkers have without, I think that kind of says that the drinking they become very social, become loving people. I think that's what they get from the substance.
From ecstasy.
Yeah.
Let's see, what's your experience on this? Where is the actual term love drug coming from? Because we understand that it has a way of making you feel more compassionate. What do you think is going on? What do you think is in the actual, maybe not necessarily even the pharmacology of the drug, but from your basic understanding, how is this different from crystal meth beyond the hallucinogen and the high, the upper?
Okay, thank you so much. So for ecstasy or Molly, we are saying it stimulates the brain. And by stimulating the brain, there are two major hormones that are stimulated, mainly serotonin as well as dopamine, which is quite different with crystal meth. The major stimulant for crystal meth is more of dopamine, the pleasurable effect. But now for serotonin, it's this is now the chemical that regulates how you're going to sleep, how you're going to your appetite, your mood, even your sexual desire. So serotonin is that chemical that stimulates all those things that now I'm about to make love. So with ecstasy, it deliberately stimulates both the serotonin as well as the dopamine. So dopamine, this is now just the excessive pleasure, the euphoria that you would want to get excited. So that's part of the molly, the party side. But also it has the serotonin, which is more like supposed to regulate that. Look, you're also a human being. You love these things and so forth. So it's regulating your calmness, the empathy that TK was talking about, the compassion, the love that you're talking about. These are already your physical needs. But now the reward system has been hijacked, and it's no longer wired the same way it is just supposed to be wired before taking ecstasy. So the reward system has been hijacked by the ecstasy.
Yeah.
So in short, serotonin is no longer functional the way it should function without having taken ecstasy.
Now, we were just saying how ecstasy is so powerful that it can last in your system for a week.
Yes.
Now, that sounds scary, right? You're on a love high for a week. Does it not likely result in a little bit of reckless behavior if now it's messing with my desire and my sense of desirability for a week? Just feeling like, I got this.
Yeah, definitely. It will promote reckless sexual behaviors or just uninformed decisions because we are looking at someone who is high, who is hyperactive, and also the idea of hallucinating now and there. So definitely the probability of making uninformed and reckless decisions is very high.
We're talking about a designer drug known as Molly 007 on the market. I wonder which is made to make you feel high, excited, and they can no one's come teens and young adults between the ages of 20 all the way up to 40 years old. And people who take this drug feel good and can keep going for days without rest. And in most cases, even on such high, there are dangerous effects of messing, as Blessing and Tika are explaining, of messing with your brain chemicals for that sustained high. It's Capital 100.4 FM, Harad is Heartbeat. Might you have any experience with someone using Molly, who takes the pill, who snorts the powder, or somebody who's always having such intense feelings, whether they're good or bad? 0719 100 404. And that's why we are trying to understand a little bit more around this drug through the voice of young people who have seen ecstasy, have walked the journey, and also met people who are struggling with ecstasy. Now, earlier you said this is a party drug. I just to know unlike things like marijuana, maybe not even as accessible as crystal meth. So, do you think it's easy to tell when someone is using ecstasy? Because on one that's too easy, we just say ecstasy. Is it white? Is it yellow?
It's the colors. The way they package it, they package it in a manner where it's so desirable. Even the names they're giving, like I'm good 007, who doesn't want to be James Bond?
Who doesn't want to be James Bond's girl?
Yeah. So the way popular culture is pushed ecstasy is very deplorable, to say the least. I've seen ecstasy pills announced by Philip Lane, my Maybachs, I don't know, my Panisha. So you find Mama must stay with you. We don't want all Maybach. Well, it's a Maybach. So already the idea in your brain is Maybach. Maybach's a luxurious vehicle.
Right.
So it must be luxury about something about that pill. So I don't know really. I don't know.
Are these different types of ecstasy or just different names of ecstasy?
There are different types of
different
ecstasy.
types.
So yeah, the different highs also from apparently from what people say. I guess the fancier the name, the more pleasurable the pill is. That's what I like to think. But you can't really tell if the person is on ecstasy.
Yeah. So what do you think, TK, from a psychological point of view, could be the long-term effects of the sustained high, where you are forcing your brain to trip your dopamine and a serotonin, your happy hormones, your love hormones, for a prolonged, unnatural period of time?
Well, there's obviously addiction. And depression comes in. Because your body burns out. It reaches a certain point where I just produce naturally my hormones. So you find your moods, you are in my unstable moods, you are in my mood swings. Oh God, that time even you are cold all the time. You are unresponsive to natural stimuli.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's something that like captures the dependence on ecstasy is the series Euphoria, done with Zendaya, where she acts. It was based on Sam Levinson, the guy who made the series. It was based on his struggle with addiction, and it's about a teenage girl. Actually, she's in high school. You know, America would be like, but like it's now a common thing. Where for her it was like a social thing. She had like mental illnesses, and she found like a drug that can alleviate the social behavior. And with time we would see, like, if you see the series, you see it shows a lot of color, it shows a lot of dancing and music and kiki and happiness. And then with time it damages her. She ends up stealing. Her mother's dying. She goes to rehab, comes back to rehab, and it really affects her and stuff like that. If you watch the series, it was like two seasons, and she's always in conflict. Her behavior becomes so detached the world, and the ecstasy was like one of her major drugs and stuff. And and like love also plays a part in that series, because like you talked about serotonin and dopamine. Another chemical that's stimulated is oxytocin. Oxytocin is also called the cardio hormone. It's a hormone responsible for bondness and closeness that we ever have, and then it really stimulates it and alleviates it further.
Yeah. We're talking this morning about a party drug that is known to have hidden dangers that most people may not be aware of as they're taking it, known as ecstasy, otherwise known as Molly. It is a popular drug that has serious consequences. In fact, if it's taken often, it's often taken at parties, festivals, nightclubs, because of this feeling of excitement that it creates. It changes your emotional, your intellectual, and your behavioral functions, as you've heard our panel explain this morning. It leaves you experiencing some really intense feelings and sensations either way of the spectrum that can last for at least a week after you've taken your first pill. But it has side effects. You may find that you will experience increased heart rate and blood pressure. You may overheat. Let's face it. You find yourself battling with dehydration, anxiety, depression. And of course, the come down symptoms after you've been on such a high, but end up leaving you feeling down, low, and can also last as long as you had taken the drug. It also is known to have fatal consequences. In fact, your liver, your kidneys can also shut down as part of trying to break down this drug in your body. It's Capital 100.4 FM, Harare's Hub. We're talking about what is known as ecstasy, Molly 007. And again, this is not about judgment really, but we're asking the question, how do we help people who are using and who are struggling? Last week we looked at the one arm that's doing this harm reduction. You want to protect your life, your health, and your dignity until you are able to stop using. So according to our national framework that we're using as a country, we want to make sure that we have clean tools to make sure that if you are going to be using, you don't catch diseases, that there are safe places for you to be able to go and talk to and get help without you feeling shame. There are also counseling and treatment that should be ready for you to go to when you are ready. And of course, our national policies coming in to say, how do we train our doctors, our nurses, and even our police to treat people who are battling with addiction like people and not criminals? But the real change is a little bit more than just talk. In fact, as a country, that's why we have 7 big action areas that we call pillars to fight against drug problems like ecstasy. For number 1, we're talking about stopping the supply. How do we catch the traffickers? How do we monitor our borders? How do we close down drug dealers? Pillar number 2 talks about reducing demand. How do we teach, empower our young people to choose better? Pillar number 3 talks about supportive healing. We need more rehab centers. We need more counseling. We also need harm reduction services. Pillar number 4, building strong communities that help families and communities get back on their feet rather than make them feel bad and dirty. Pillar number 5 speaks about rebuilding trust. How do we make sure people feel safe to return and be accepted again when they come back from rehabilitation? Pillar number 6 talks about telling the right story. How do we use the media like radio, like TV, to spread hope and not shame? And our last pillar, looking at our framework as a country, is talking about fixing our laws. How do we update policies so that our justice is smarter and fairer to people who are battling and using substances? And these are the 7 pillars of our multi-sectoral drug and substance abuse framework. Now, let's come back to what we're talking about, the MDMA, and I've sort of compressed the pillars to make it easier for us to discuss. I think it was Brian Blessing who said, you know, it's coming through our borders, it's coming in full form. In your experience as somebody who's an addiction specialist, do you think right now we have enough border controls that are equipped to actually detect these synthetic drugs like MDMA when it comes to it?
I think it's a work in progress because it's evident by the fact that we are still seeing people bagastika on the streets and everywhere, and also not just talking about how the borders have been regulated and being policed. We still find other people drugs, like you were saying, in the labs as well as
in Zimbabwe.
Yes. There are people that are producing drugs from scratch and vachimatengesa. So already, in as much as we are dealing with the other angle of enforcing Kuma borders, the most important conversation, it's a holistic approach. My neighbors, my communities, my residents, kuchechi, let's speak about kanata taona kuti kuna jazzman, kune vanhu vari kutengesa, kune vanhu vari kugadzirisa. But vanhu avadi kunzi, they don't want to talk about the conversation because probably haazi mwana wavo apindana nedambudziko racho. So they will remain quiet vachitoziva kuti nhingi ndiye ari kutengesa. So I'm just saying the conversation, in as much as we're having the government playing its role, we also need to be full hands on deck as the citizens to play our role. So
you bring a very important aspect there, Blessing, around the idea of community, right? Brian, if you can come in there, to try and disrupt the ecstasy supply chains that might be there.
Yes,
but also because the same policy we're talking about speaks around the idea of destigmatization, treating people with dignity even though they may be involved in drug trafficking and things like that, and also drug users, and we actually use an acronym LEARN that speaks to that. So how do we get involved, but without also shaming and destigmatizing? And also, you've just reminded me of how, you know, when you look at things like HIV, now it's no longer unlawful to say you intentionally infected me, because it then carried a certain stigma with that. Similarly, even with the use of drugs and substances, if we want to get to a place where we don't shame users, that means that the ripple effect is 360. It's not just the user we're looking at, it's even the trafficker. I don't know. I want to understand your thoughts there. How do we navigate?
I don't know. I beg to differ when you say you're going to have to stop the trafficker. Right. You need to name and shame. Right. I think that's what I think. Because so many people are being affected with this drugs. Right. And if you go, like, speaking of ecstasy, if you go to clubs, right, they know there's this dealer there. Like, if you ask, like, I'm looking for ecstasy, they'll send you to someone, right? So how about we name and shame that person, right? The users, of course, if there's someone who's been affected, there's different reasons why people start taking drugs, right? Like I say, the issue of social anxiety, someone just needs that euphoria, right? Or it's just being invited, just exposed to the substance. So people tend, like, we have different personalities, right? People are just experimental, like most of them are just experimental, like okay, let me try this, right? And then you become dependent on that substance. So saying we should name and shame the distributors, because that's where the law comes to play, right?
The law is talking about, it's saying we must restore life and hope through rehabilitation, reintegration, non-stigmatization. We are promoting non-stigmatizing
Of users.
drug substance abuse intervention and responses, ensuring respect, dignity, rights of individuals, people, regardless of gender, age, creed, and religion. The learned principles provide the basis for promoting evidence-based drug substance abuse planning, programming, policy, and action, whilst nurturing inclusion, listen to this, dignity, and leaving no one behind in drug control responses in Zimbabwe. To me, it sounds more inclusive than just focusing on the user. It is speaking to the approach we want to have to our 7 pillars that are looking at the supply, the demand, the reduction.
The question is, we know what they're doing is illegal, right? So how then are you gonna make sure that the law gets to them?
So only because of time, this is an interesting one.
I have something to say. Are we talking about illicit drugs or are we talking about drugs? Because a pharmacist,
Illicit drugs.
a pharmacist, you can
Illicit drugs.
but I can be a drug abuse or a drug addict from prescription pills. So does that make the pharmacy a distributor?
So hold that thought. We will continue this discussion because I think that's a very interesting point of view there. Do we name and shame, but how do we tie this in with what our national drug policy is talking about destigmatizing the process? It's 11 o'clock, it is time for the news.
Your visit has received more than 1,000.
We should name and shame.